So I'm going to start off with I hate the words in-service event so much. It is one of my pet peeves, and I know that it's in writing. I get it, but it's one of those phrases that people hear and assume one thing, right? Event, something happened, something occurred. A Humvee was hit by an IED. That's an in-service event. Damn right.
Mm-hmm.
Me getting migraines, there's no damn in-service event to a normal person thinking about it. Welcome to VA and its blurry language. So what I like to say for the sake of clarity is what we're looking for here is show me that your condition manifested during your time in service or is a result of your time in service, right? So the result would be the in-service event is an easy way to connect that piece, but the manifesting, it feels different. And that's why I hate VA language so much. I mean, I don't even like that they call it VA disability because people think you have to be on crutches or in a wheelchair, be physically disabled in order to get it. And so they never even look. So again, I don't know if it's by design, could be, right? But here we are. So if somebody has nothing, right? And again, there's 1,000 right answers because there's 1,000 different situations that would lead down different paths. My favorite examples are things like migraine headaches or gastroesophageal reflux disease, bad heartburn, right? Like those types of things. Why? Because, and you could broaden that out to anything else that can be like this. Anything that is maybe not so bad where you actually have to go to a medical facility. You can kind of deal with it over the counter and really deal with it kind of in a suck it up fashion, okay? And it's important to understand that aspect of it because if the VA denies you after we build our evidence, it's going to go in front of a judge who's going to read it and look at it through the eyes of, does this make sense? Does the story make sense? And I'll tell you what, here's the story. Veteran, migraines, we'll say they have both, migraines and GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, bad heartburn. They go to their medic or their corpsman almost every day, especially when they're in the field. Can I have some Motrin? Can I have some antacid? Yay, right? And that's what happens for 4 years or whatever it is. And then, and when they're not there, they're at the grocery store buying it, right? Then they get out and they move on with life and they miss that 1 year window because nobody told them and they keep moving on. And then one day they see a commercial about migraine headaches and then some sort of prescription that's, you know, and they think to themselves or their spouse looks at them and goes, yeah, you know what? All that Motrin is going to jack you up. You should take something else that's not going to destroy the other pieces of you. All right. Okay. And then it's the, you know, you see Larry the Cable Guy talking about Prilosec and you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'll give it a shot. Right. So now, I mean, if he can jet ski with Prilosec, man, so can I. Yeah. So, right. So now you finally go get diagnosed, but now it's 20 years later. That sucks, but your story makes sense. Plenty of people never go to the doctor and get diagnosed for those types of conditions. They just self-medicate and deal with it. So the story makes sense. So now you have to write down your story, and you're going to do that on the 4138 form. You're going to fill out your story about, got it from my medic corpsman, lived with it ever since I was in, blah, 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 right? And you write it out and buy it from the grocery store, kept dealing with it. You know, my wife kicked me in the butt and told me that I had to go to the doctor 20 years later because my, you know, whatever, my kidneys were going to fall out and my esophagus was going to deteriorate and so on. So that's in your story. Now there's another form. I can't remember it off the top of my head. Maybe you remember the number, but it's for your witnesses. People who can attest to knowing that you suffered with X during your time in service. Now, it can be what we call buddy statements, people you served with, right? Who can be like, oh, yeah, he was always, you know, eating mouthfuls of whatever. You can also have your spouse, if you were married at the time, or your significant other or family members that knew you, like, you know, hey, when you, sorry, it's feeling a little blue. So when you when you went home on leave, and all of a sudden you're just popping, Motrin and Tums, maybe your mother or your father commented on it. Have them write a letter, right? Yeah, when he left, he never did that. Now he's here, and now he's doing that. Those letters will go a long way. It's called lay evidence, and it will help you when you get to the point, especially if you have to go to an appeal. Lastly, Clay, and then I'll pass it back to you, is the nexus letter, which a lot of us talk about. Nexus letter is helping you to prove the nexus. Okay. Nexus and nexus letter are two different things. The nexus letter helps you identify the nexus, the cause, the link between, whatever you want to call it. So your doctor writes you a letter describing your relationship, and that they've treated you for X, you're on prescription Y, and that in their opinion, because of blah, 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 that it's at least likely is not that your condition, that's the minimum threshold, at least likely is not. It'd be good if you can get them to say more than likely, if they will. If they're reluctant, then say, well, coin flip it, at least as likely. And have them write that it's at least as likely to have manifested during your time in service in these two examples that I gave you, Clay. And then I would submit all of that stuff together to get a successful service connection. The VA may screw it up. They might, they may deny you, but I would feel very confident with your chances through the board. Back to you.
Yeah, that is almost, it's weirdly almost exactly what I was going to say. And I'll double down on it. And I want everyone to know that this is completely my opinion. Okay. But I'm known to just be real. I'm just going to keep it straight up with you. If you don't have medical evidence in service and you are relying on statements, either a personal statement, which is the 4138, and then the lay statement, which is a 10210 or 10210, the reality is you are fighting an uphill battle. And that's important to know, because I don't want you to get your hopes up and then be denied, because you're probably going to be denied. And there's a few reasons to that. One, CMP examiners are medical professionals. They are required to look at the evidence the VA sends them. Knowing that it's not there, they're going to see it's not there, and they're not going to recommend the nexus 9 out of 10 times. Okay. And we're talking about no evidence here. And I would double down on what you said, and this might be more aggressive, but I would argue that statements come into play in appeals more than any other time, specifically at the board. Higher level review, sure. I've rarely seen a higher level review be in favor of service connection. It's generally in favor of an increase that wasn't increased. Supplemental claim, if you don't have the evidence, you're just going to be denied again, probably, because you have to have new and relevant evidence. If you don't have the in-service events, how are you going to produce the in-service event or the time in service or the condition that manifested in service, right? And so that's really where you'll see veterans go to the board. I'm not saying go to the board immediately. What I'm saying is you have to have some type of in-service event per the criteria of the VA. And so what does that look like? And I like how you mentioned your story has to make sense. So I know someone's going to see this and is basically like, well, I can make up a statement and whatever I want. It's like, no, the VA, believe it or not, the VA is not stupid, right? And the judges that you go see aren't stupid. Okay, that's an understatement. But if your story makes sense and you have the duties and responsibilities of like a hardship MOS or an environment that you are in, and you have personal statements and lay statements, in a perfect scenario, in the one you gave, if you had a lay statement from the corpsman that gave you that over the counter medication, all of a sudden that
Super
one lay
solid.
statement really, really elevates that claim. Now, it's 20 years ago, or do you even remember the corpsman's name? Probably not. So I understand where that might be difficult. But like when I say it's an uphill battle, that's the mindset you have to have. Now, you have medical evidence, easy peasy. You're going to win that majority of the time. And that gets into competing evidence. But if you don't have evidence, you really need to do the work. And if you don't, you'll be denied, and you can complain about it. That's okay. But if you do the work, I would prepare to fight in appeals. That's not necessarily that I'm recommending you hire a lawyer, but you might want to consider it. Maybe it depends on your situation. But that it's a tough pill to swallow, and I get everyone wants to say, "Hey, you're going to win that claim no matter what." There's no way in the world I would ever tell a veteran without medical evidence from service that they are guaranteed going to win a claim. And the last thing I want to bring up is the nexus as well. Yes, go ahead.
Well, one more thing. When it comes to, and again, because it's so nuanced, right? It really depends on the condition.
Yeah.
Look for studies, right? Type in Google search different studies that maybe universities have done on specific likelihoods of, veterans versus non-veterans coming down with certain ailments, those types of things. All of that stuff can be used as evidence in your favor. Anything you can do to get that needle to just click a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, in the event that, look, again, Clay's talking about zero evidence in your file, right? Zero, nothing. There's nothing in your nothing. And when I'm hearing nothing from you, Clay, I'm going, my MOS can't even be a factor in this one.
Yeah.
That's a true zero, right? Like just true zero, nothing you can hang your hat on. Just simply the fact you served in this time frame, that's all you have. I served from here to here, period. So veteran status is the only thing that you can work with. So also, again, take whatever ailments you have, throw in university, study, whatever condition, veteran, and see if some sort of study, you never know. There could be a study that shows up that says, hey, veterans are, 2 times more likely to have X. Perfect. That's going to help my doctor write that nexus letter with some rationale. That's going to be additional evidence for the board to look at, because guess what? They're looking at the evidence and they're looking at law. And if they feel as though the evidence is equal, they're ruling in your favor. It's just going to be a long road to get there, and, some heartache along the way. Back to you.
Oh yeah, no, that sparked. So one of my close personal friends I'm working with right now, there's new studies. So long story short, we were in Syria in 17, and this was the Arty battery, and they shot a lot, like way more rounds from like the whole Vietnam conflict was shot in Syria within about a 6 month time frame. And all of that was from Fox Battery in the Marine Corps. There's new studies out right now, and this is a downer. Okay, we'll kind of jump out of this here real soon.
Jeez.
Tons
Can't
of
take you anywhere.
Yeah, tons of our peers are committing suicide at an alarming rate, like way higher than the average rate within that small group. TBI, hearing loss, just the normal vertigo, Meniere's, TBI like symptoms. All that's new. This veteran is claiming TBI. They were diagnosed. They were denied because guess what? They had no evidence. Now, in this instance, there's a deployment there with the MOS, but being deployed as an artilleryman does not mean you're going to have TBI. So I wouldn't say that's evidence personally. But he is using those studies specifically to combat that denial as supplemental evidence. And so we'll see where that claim goes. But that's the reason I bring that up is because that's the mindset you need to have when you don't have medical evidence from service. And then the last thing I will say for the Nexus letter is you made a great point about going to your doctor, which is always preferred. But if you were going to pay for a Nexus, I would caution anyone doing that without evidence from service, because just think about it logically. What you're asking this person to do is put their credentials on the line to make a Nexus without evidence from service. You could see how that would be difficult. And so I'm not saying no one's ever won like that. They have, but it's not a slam dunk. So even though you pay $1,200 for a Nexus letter, it does not mean you're going to get the Nexus. It very well could be. I just want to throw that out there. But yeah, unless you have anything else, Jason, we can go on to